6 o'clock, we'll call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Supervisor Gens.
Here.
Supervisor Nudo.
Here.
Supervisor Brookhouse.
Here.
Supervisor Gama.
Here.
Supervisor Gashke.
Here.
Supervisor Geertsen.
Here.
And Supervisor Kirby. Here.
All right, we'll start with the departments, treasurer, elected services.
Hello.
Hello,
How are you?
living the dream.
Do you want to start with treasurer or elected services, or don't you care? Treasurer is the page they're on. We'll start with that one then. All right, I think most of the top part is pretty straightforward, not some huge changes. I kind of figure the places you'll have questions for are the revenue side of things. The big look, if I were you and looking at it, would be last year you made 58,000, and next year you're saying we're going to make 70,000 in ag use conversion charges. But somehow this year to date, you have 397,000. What the heck is going on there? And what the heck is going on there is called a solar farm in Paris. For those of you who recall, the ag use conversion charge is done whenever any property is taken out of an agricultural use and put into some other use. There is a conversion charge because for all those years it was an agricultural use, it received a reduced assessment. And we didn't really see this coming because there was a lot of debates in the state as to whether or not, because these solar farms go to be exempt because they're utilities now. So there was some debates on whether or not we would actually be able to collect a conversion charge on these parcels. And guess what? We can. So the Paris solar farm brought in about $375,000 for our half and $375,000 for Paris's half in ag use conversion charges. So that's why you have this huge flip in the middle of a normally about $60,000 thing. So that's a huge flip. The other ones are we're kind of ratcheting down the interest on investment line. As all of you have heard, interest rates are probably going to continue to go down. So Barna has looked into his magic ball and tried to guess how much they're going to go down. And he came out with that 3.8 number. And then same thing with interest and penalty on delinquent taxes. We've been significantly lower in the amount of properties that are going delinquent. So we need to start ratcheting that down a little bit more, just so that we're not counting on money that's never going to be there because you can't collect interest and penalty on people that don't go delinquent. So, so that's kind of the big ones on that. Any other questions?
Nope. Supervisor Gearston.
Mr. Chairman, I would move approval of the treasurer's budget, and if I get a second, I'll ask a question.
Been moved by Supervisor Gearston, seconded by Supervisor Nudo. You have the floor, Supervisor Gearston.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through the chair to the treasurer. The conversion that we got on the hundreds of thousands of dollars, the way I do the math, that's hundreds of years of tax collections had it remained as ag land.
Correct.
I mean, it could be like as much as 500 years. So
Yeah.
so that's in the ballpark. That's correct. So we are ahead of the game and doing much better. I remember that we adopted a resolution to fix the roads, and they paid us $85,000 to fix the roads. But we're also like hundreds of years ahead of the game as far as the tax collection. So that's correct.
Yep.
I yield. Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Thank you.
All right, so elected services, this one's always pretty straightforward. Pretty much personnel and a little bit for like furnitures and fixtures. The one little blip, if you're looking at the percent shade, would probably be the increase on the public liability insurance. I'm gonna yield to Barna on that one in that it just went up. That's just what it is, right, Barna?
It's based on the allocation, the actual new actuary analysis that we did. That's fine.
Oh, that's what it is. That's the biggest change there. Otherwise, it's pretty standard. The office is still getting a lot of use out there for all of us. Obviously, our peak time is in July when we have the lines out there, but really year round, People are making property tax payments there, people are applying for marriage licenses, recording deeds, all those sorts of things, so. Any other questions?
Been moved by Supervisor Nudo, seconded by Supervisor Kirby to approve elected services. Any questions or comments on this? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Go.
Good evening, supervisors. I used to joke that this is, no doubt the most exciting 3 minutes you're gonna have all week, but I've decided after a number of years of doing this, that the last thing I want to be at budget time is exciting. So instead, I'll point out that hopefully this will be the easiest 0.3% of the county budget that you will deal with. Some of you have heard this spiel already, this year. All of you have heard, some version of it. The total, budget request for the Corporation Counsel's Office is just under $950,000. I point out always that, of that, 107,000 is what I consider to be quote discretionary, by which I mean that's my actual ask as opposed to the money that finance gives me. So it's about that my ask is about 11% of the total budget. It is a 1% increase over last year, if I'm doing my math correct, and my actual requested increase is nothing. So going through quickly, personnel, I always just remind that although the organizational chart lists 5.7 FTEs, we have 6 people in the Corporation Counsel's Office. It's 4 attorneys and 2 support people. Point 0.3, thank you. I'm fighting off a cold.
How do you divide, how's 0.3 of a percent? I mean, really?
So what it is that 0.15 of Jennifer Kopp, the first assistant's time / salary, and 0.15 of Michelle Peralta is assigned to liability. They are our primary contacts with our insurer and take care of liaising with them. And so it's just assigned to a different department or different line. But there are 6 of us. The vast majority of the budget is salaries. It's about 64% of the total office budget. When you add in insurance, retirement, workers' compensation, brings it up to about 88% of that total number. Only because this came up at the oversight committee last week, I was asked whether I thought 6 was enough. I'll say that in the 15 plus years that I've been here, that number has remained constant. The number of attorneys has fluctuated historically between 3 and 5 on occasion, but it has been 4 for a number of years now. I'm pretty comfortable with where we're at. If there was if at some point we saw some significant change in the workload, that might be a conversation to have at that point. We've certainly seen increased public records responses, but I still feel that we're handling what we have correctly, and I'm comfortable with the numbers we've got. The biggest item in, again, the things that I asked for is the legal fees. As you've heard me say before, that's for outside counsel. Typically, that's when we have either an actual potential or perceived conflict with the office, something that's highly specialized, or something that's time sensitive. And it just sometimes makes more sense to reach out. The world is getting more complex. Sometimes matters are more time consuming than we have the ability to do. The world is getting more litigious. The request is 60,000. That's the same as last year. You may recall at last year's budget, I pointed out that it had been at 40,000 since sometime in the early 2000s. And it was the first time that we had added to it. Again, because this question came up before the meeting, we've spent about 30,000 year to date. Some of the things that we spend that money on in the last couple of years has been ethics investigations, employment matters, particularly the things that we think are going to wind up in litigation. We try to get attorneys involved very early on so that we make sure we're doing everything right on the front end. We consult with the WCA attorneys on things. As everyone is familiar, we had a very long and I think ultimately successful project to review both the county's ethics code and the county board rules. A lot of money and time went into that. We've worked on specialized ordinances. A couple years ago was the casino matter. We've got a couple of cases pending right now. As I always say, the challenge with this line item is to paraphrase the old Donald Rumsfeld line, you have known knowns, you have known unknowns, and you have unknown unknowns. We know there's going to be matters that we're going to have to go to outside counsel for. We don't know how many or how expensive they're going to be. Again, I'm comfortable with the amount we have in there. And there's language, as the committee is aware, in the budget resolution that rolls that over if for some reason we don't wind up spending it. Trial costs, that's primarily filing fees, fees for process service, transcripts, postage. A lot of that is used for the in-rem tax deed and the part of that process that our office handles. Office machines, we've got a couple of items of machinery that go on that line item. Office supplies, I think, is self-explanatory. Printing duplication is envelopes and stationery and business cards. The next two are kind of overlapping a little bit. Subscriptions and books and manuals. Subscriptions is primarily online legal research resources and state bar legal materials. We also added a couple years ago, we are responsible for the subscription for the new online ordinance program that rolled out a little bit earlier this year. If you haven't had a chance to check that out, please do. For years, literally the ordinances that you could find through the Corporation Council website was a PDF. And every time we made a change in the ordinance, we had to, physically scan something new in and put it in. It's now up there. There are links. It can be updated by the company that we're working with very quickly. It can link to statutes. It can link to other things. It's really nice, but we're paying for that out of that line. Books and manuals is primarily physical legal research resources. And this is actually where there's a little bit of paring back. Everybody was asked to do that. I think you've probably heard that from other people already this year. We were able to utilize some efficiencies and cut some redundancies. We're increasing our utilization of some electronic rather than physical resources. We're trying to consolidate a couple of bundles, if you will. And so that line went down $3,500. Mileage and travel is primarily used for if people are driving to things. Staff development, that's educational seminars and professional organizations. The 4 attorneys, we're all required to every 2 years report 30 continuing legal education credits in order to keep our licenses valid. So it pays for that. We also, like I say, pay for our professional organizations. We're also required to be members of the state bar in order to keep our licenses active. That's up to about $500 a year for each of the 4 attorneys. And then there are other professional organizations that we have membership in or belong to. We are not a revenue unit. Historically, we would have a very small revenue line for providing legal services to joint services. We took that out a couple of years ago because it just didn't really make a lot of sense. It literally was about $700 or $1,000 a year. So we're not a revenue producing unit. You'll note, however, there is a revenue line on there for $17,000. That is the rollover in legal fees from last year. So that's why there is a revenue line. But again, we are not a revenue producing unit. And I think everybody's certainly familiar with that. So with that, I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that the committee might have.
Supervisor Gearston.
Mr. Chairman, I would move approval of the court council budget.
It's been moved by Supervisor Gearston. Seconded by Supervisor Gama. Supervisor Nudo.
John, thank you. I have a couple questions. One is, if we go back to the legal fees, $60,000. And I believe you say you feel comfortable with that?
Yes.
Okay, now, I don't know whether it's true or not, but I did not see it, by the way. But I heard somebody told me they were reading some newspapers or some news, Kenosha News, and they had in there that somebody filed a lawsuit, and they reported that we already spent $100,000 in legal fees. Is that true, or is it just, as I said, I did not see it because I don't read any newspapers in Kenosha County because I don't believe 10% of what they put in.
Like CIS, he can't report on an ongoing investigation. Talk to me.
Yeah, well, no, I can,
Kidding.
It's gonna be investigation,
Go ahead.
and then,
I can certainly say, like I said, I checked actually just this morning, so that I had the number. We've spent, like I said, just about $30,000 year to date. So we certainly haven't spent anything close to $100,000. One of the things that has, helped with that somewhat is, in the last year or two, our insurer has added a new, defense rider. So, there are certain matters that WIMIC doesn't cover, but by going through them, we can get the insurance company rates for attorneys that we work with anyways. And that's been really helpful. So, yeah, no, we haven't spent anything near $100,000 this year.
okay, so basically, if he was, because again, it's not something that I did see it, if he was on the news, which I believe the person that told me that, I don't know if anybody's seen it. So that was just something made up from whoever wrote it.
I certainly couldn't comment one way or another, other than to say that.
But you know,
that
we
is
did
not
not spend the
accurate.
money, not even close to it or whatever. And the other question is about the $2,500 for trial cost,
Mhm.
which basically is pretty much attached to the same question that I asked before. If we go to trial on any of this, would that be enough to do it, or?
And perhaps going forward, and I would defer to the finance people, maybe we need a better name for that line, because it is somewhat misleading. It's not actually costs that we use if we're going to trial. It's really costs that we use for other legal matters. So like if we have to pay a filing fee, if we have to pay someone to serve a paper for us, I'll be honest, I don't remember, and Terry has already left. When we do the tax deed in REM process, we have to publish a large ad with all of the parcels. I think that comes out of that budget as well, but I wouldn't swear to it. That may come out of something else. So don't hold me to that. So no, again, the $2,500, about 4 or 5 years ago, we went through and we did a very sort of deep dive into all of these lines, looked at historical uses, and found that I think the numbers we're using, which again tend to carry over from year to year without a lot of change, reflect historical use, and I'm really pretty comfortable with everything.
I appreciate that, and actually explain, I mean, it was, again, not that I believe that or I repeat myself, but I just want to make clear that a lot of times, whatever this newsman they put in, it's just something like that, it's not true, whatever they get their numbers, and that's why before I said anything, I wanted to make sure, and you feel comfortable with those numbers, and I'm okay with all of them. Thank you for the explanation.
Any other questions or comments? I was gonna bring up whether or not you could handle $3,500 less in books and manuals, but you went over it as you did every line. And I just, for the record, want to tell you, you far exceeded the 3 minutes you said when you said. I'm throwing that out there, okay?
To be fair, I'm a lawyer. I can't. say
I know.
less than-
I wasn't gonna make a lawyer joke though, but anyway, okay.
We're not.
No. All right, seeing no other questions or comments, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to say I'd be shorter, but I don't want to make a promise.
Here you go. Hey, you picked up on that, huh? Page 83.
And I did provide a handout, which is just a snapshot of all the changes in my budget, which should help you. Thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight to present next year's budget. Starting at the top with the personnel appropriation unit, I'm recommending an increase of $21,675. County administration is projecting increases in all personnel line items within my budget except for overtime and workers' comp. I'm going to skip other professional services group and come back to that at the end. I'm not requesting any furniture next year, so that's a $700 decrease. I'd like to say Barna, but the budget team is recommending a decrease in the public liability line item of $1,200. And with regard to secure detention revenue, We actually saw a year-end actual in 2024 a little higher than we anticipated. So we are increasing that line item by 2,000. Regarding the other professional services account, that covers all the costs of juvenile detention when youth are held in general population, the non-programming beds, the non-DCFS beds. Over the last 3 years, starting in 23, Barna, Matt, and I and Patty have discussed using carryover from what's ever left in that line item, bringing it over to the next year. And that has really helped with my budget. And as you can see in 2025, I had carryover of $263,000, which brought my budget up to $613,000. Through through the end of September of this year, we have spent $311,000, which is averaging about $34,000 a month. So had I not had that, I would have been over budget this year. The budget team is also recommending, along with myself, that we can decrease that line item by $5,000 for next year, knowing that I'll have more carryover to bring into 2026. And that is all I have. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Did I just say hear you say you're reducing the carryover number by 5,000?
No, no line
2026.
item by 5,000.
Supervisor Gearston.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of Mary's juvenile intake budget.
It's been moved by Supervisor Gearston, seconded by Vice Chair Gashke. Any questions or comments? Supervisor Nudo.
Just a quick question. With the $5,000 reduction, you feel comfortable with that? I mean, I don't know, just kind of, why was $5,000 that we're talking about $350,000?
Right.
And to make a change for 5,000, is there a reason? Basically, that's what I'm trying to figure out. Is that a reason why?
There's not any strong reason why. It was recommended that from the budget team, that I could do that. So,
That you could do that?
So
Any
I-
reasons why? I don't know, maybe Arnold or Peter can answer that. What's the reason?
So if you, based on her projection, so for the first 9 months, she's averaging 35,000 a month-ish.
Okay,
So if you extrapolate that out for the next 3 months, that puts her at about 415,000.
okay,
And she has a adopted budget or a modified budget of 613. So that's just short of anticipated $200,000 carryover. So if you add that 200,000 to the 345, that puts it at 545,000. And that's roughly about a 18% increase. And we put that there just in case, based on historical, if we get more juveniles and if we send more to the more expensive facility, then we can cover it.
so which they'll bring it to the total to
To get
545.
Yep.
All right, if I'm following you correct. How much did we spend this year? What are we expecting spending this year?
415.
Yeah, about 415.
So we're increasing that by 100 and it was increased by 135,000.
Yeah.
With the $5,000 reduction, it's 130,000. So if we go based on that, why was not reduced by more than the 5,000? It just seems like the 5,000 to me, okay, when I was looking at the numbers, is that $5,000 will kind of bring us 3% levy in versus 2.98. So my feeling is that the reason that was done is just make it look good. They would say we would stay under 3%. Otherwise, with that much, if we're gonna change it, why not change it for 30,000? You know, put just $100,000 over what we're spending this year, which that would be quite a bit. And that would be feasible to do that. You know, or just leave it with the $5,000 there. So
I mean, that'd be
That's
one,
what I have problem, understanding the reasons why some of these numbers come up this way.
that would be one way to look at it, but I know that Mary has said over the years that it's a variable cost because we don't have a crystal ball and know exactly how many juveniles we're gonna house. So because of that, we have to build in, we have to be conservative to make sure. A few years back, I remember we had a
Right.
number of juveniles that we had to house and it was very expensive, so.
if I can just add this comment, this might help explain what Barna's talking about. This year, the average cost of a bed, depending where we find an open bed, has been $221 a day. Last year, it was $270 a day. So we've actually been budget shopping. We've been trying to find, not that we're purposely looking at facilities that charge less. We've been fortunate to find beds at facilities that charge less. I don't know what next year's gonna look like.
And I understand what you're saying, and I agree, we should be conservative. My problem was, it still is, why did we make the reduction of the $5,000? I mean, it should, you know, I would have been fine, I would not have asked any questions if we was left to that, or even if it was reduced by another 50,000, because, okay, that's what it is. But just the $5,000 bothers me because it seems like it's just a game play to work out the numbers to make them sound like what they really are, but in reality, they're not. And I understand, it's a guess, it might be more, you know?
Mhm.
So I'd rather be on the conservative side than, so, but that's what bothers me. Otherwise, the $5,000, really, it's not a big deal. Thank you.
Supervisor Gash.
Mary, the new youth facility in Racine, is that, would that come out of this fund that we're talking about? No, okay.
No. That facility has 48 beds. 32 are their new programming beds, the beds that DCFS might use along with every other county in the state. They're the correctional residential beds. They only have 16 beds for what I would use, but they're currently charging higher rates than the other facilities, and they don't have room in those general population beds. So that is also why we are looking further up the road.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor?
I,
Any opposed? Thank you.
I tried.
Sorry,
Yeah, but
my
you didn't
fault.
throw a number
My
out
fault.
That was his first mistake, the 3-minute number. Public Works here, or
Yeah.
do we need to skip them, or way to get them in line, Bill?
Yeah.
We are on page 128.
yeah,
Oh,
he's got it all.
I did a quick
Does anybody need an extra?
based on the
report?
percentage increase we've seen.
Yeah, I didn't hand those out, so
We were,
You might want to see a bunch.
it'd be like 60 less.
Oh.
That makes sense.
Yeah, should be the same.
Some people are.
Nope, you're too late.
Not fast enough.
Here, here.
All right, so we also want.
The only problem with this is that all my notes are in this.
Well, you're right.
Of course I'm right, kid.
No, no. I did not have too many notes. I think I had remember. Yeah.
Are you an expert at this?
I waste.
What division's first?
Facility, I think.
Oh, you never.
And then we'll go there.
Oh. I'm already ready for that one.
So we could have just.
He's gonna walk through his hand out so he's gonna be, oh,
Okay. Okay.
Ready?
Well, I guess, I don't think I'm ever gonna be ready, cause they don't match, but okay.
So last year, we came in front of you guys and that was one of the first years that, to my knowledge, that DPW came forward with a reduction in levy, proposal for the budget. We're back again, back-to-back years. Some could compare it to the 95 goals, but I'll let you guys decide that.
That's a beautiful thing.
Very minor reduction, but a reduction nonetheless. This first page just kind of gives you an overview of the revenues to the expenses as they compare from 26 to 25, increases. Bottom boxes below that kind of break it out into different segments. We got our operation expense, and we always add these percentages just because numbers may change, but it may be a similar percentage or allocation that it is. You can see 25 to 26 is a 0.2% difference in our operating expense. The levy of 0.3, and bonding below that, very similar as well. This fourth box used to be ARPA, but being that ARPA ended back in 2024, I needed to find a spot to fill up the page. So I thought parkland development was a good addition. It does obviously help both operations and capital. And you can see, what amount of those funds that we're using to help offset some of the levy and bonding that we need. At the bottom, we just give the summary of the full-time equivalents. This is the same as page 31 in the budget book. We'll go into it in detail when we get to the departments. But you'll see there's a quarter-time position of custodian. That would be quarter 4 of 26. It would roll over into a full-time position for 27 and beyond. And the other highway and P&Ds are just transfers. There's not a cut and an addition. It's a transfer. If you flip to page 2, this one's kind of folded over. I always throw little tidbits at the bottom. To kind of give a summary of what's going on with the college. In the 26 proposal, I do just want to point out on the reserves carryover ARPA line. Typically, you don't see that in a proposal because there is no such thing as carryover in a proposed budget. But I wanted to highlight that because a big portion of the reason of why we're able to have a reduction in levy is by allocating some of the carryover funds or excess funds that we plan on having in 25 to offset 26. It was big picture thinking when the beginning of the year, 2026 was rumored to be a bad year and we were going to have to make cuts. So we figured, let's figure out a way to use the funds that we already have available that are a surplus and allocate them to a future year. So we highlighted those in this column only so they could stick out. That's not a way to go about budgeting every year. This is simply a Band-Aid to hopefully get us through 26, and we'll see what 27, 28 holds and how we can go about those budgets, but a strategy nonetheless for this year. We'll go ahead and flip on to page 3. This is now getting into the actual division level details. First division will be UW Extension. They have 3 different types of.
Wait, since this is gonna be long and prolonged, I'm gonna allow any questions in the middle so that somebody like me doesn't forget. So, and since I'm the chair, I can probably do that. So that carryover, how sure are we that those carryover numbers are gonna be there and are they still fluctuating or, I mean, that's an interesting way to budget with
Right.
carryover money that we don't have.
So it comes into play with some of the forecasts that we have, and a large portion of the one that's in the highway comes from the SALT line fund, which carries budget language and resolution that can be moved from year to year as long as there's money available in that specific line. That's 125 grand of the 150. Part of that was carried over with the intention that when this new winter operations facility is built, it will help to go to offset some of the funds that would need to make that full capacity. That's still the plan eventually, but in order to try and get past 26, which comes before that building, that's what's used there. In parks, the end of year forecast is looking rather well. Of 20,000 of this 30,000 is in seasonal dollars, which they didn't use in 24. They didn't use them all up in 25 because of lifeguard shortages and different things like that. If we continue in that 26, we won't even need to use these carryover funds. And then we don't have to worry about increasing, decreasing levy in regards to those specific accounts next year. And the other is the building equipment maintenance 10,000, which has rolled over from 24 to 25, just simply catching up from the transition of the directors.
So this is a one-time thing to get us through this year's budget, and next year, we're not gonna look.
It's
To
not
build a budget
sustainable
with
to-
carryover, yeah.
No, because if we keep doing it, eventually the main dollars that we use for our levy are gonna be so low that we're gonna hit a year that now all of a sudden we have to increase by 20-30% just to catch up to what we need. So when we get to highways, we'll go over where I think 26, the budgeting for 27, we may be able to make up some funds that can help cover some of these extras that we need to go up. But going from 27 to 28, no, this is not feasible.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions in regards to the overall picture? Page 3, UW extension. The only real change on here is the other professional services, which is 99%. The 136 contract, which is the teacher or professions contract. That's on page 4. You can kind of look at these side by side. You can see the increases. And that accounts for the roughly $6,000 increase that you see. The only reason that those numbers don't match exactly is because there's a couple $100 in there for them to finalize an end of year reporting. Other than that, no changes. The salary is temporary. It's the seasonal that helps take care of the arboretum and the garden out there, along with the horticulturist. I'll pause there for questions.
Supervisor Nudo.
On page 4, the discount, $10,000, what's that? I'll look.
Oh, it just stuck my.
I'm
Did you
sorry.
skip ahead?
No, I went up to page 4.
Oh, okay.
Every, with the university does a $10,000 credit or discount every year. So that's just something that they do. So they do the overall and then they call it the first educator discount. And it's the $10,000 discount.
You don't get one.
I told them to give it to you.
All right.
Thank you.
Supervisor Gearston.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Were you completed with your report on the, Chris, were you completed on your report
Yeah.
for UW Extension?
What I should say is this is actually one of the first times that all these positions have been filled. When we've come at this time of year, usually there's 1 or 2 that have remained unfilled.
That is true.
And
Yeah.
do we cut it or not? We've actually been filled at least since February.
Yes.
March, February, March.
Yep.
Um, yeah, so we'll knock on wood that trend continues. Page 5 then goes to the UW extension programs of what those professors utilize. It's money in, money out, so it's levy neutral. But the after-school program hasn't been utilized pretty much since COVID turned around, and now that we have full staff, the professor running that program actually plans to bring that back next year. So
Thank you.
that is the whole spiel.
So, thank you. I think I still have the floor. Did you want to approve these, division by division?
Yeah, that's the way we've been doing it.
So I would make a motion to approve UW Extension.
It's been moved by Supervisor Gearston, seconded by Supervisor Kirby. Any other questions or comments on this section? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Thank you.
All right, we will go to page 6. This is for planning and development. We do have, this is one of the positions of the full-time that was transferred. This is transferring from finance into planning and development. It's pretty much just a logistics move. Right now, finance oversees that position, but is not with that position, doesn't correlate office hours, the need, things along those natures. So it just makes more logistical sense to have that in P and D. They're already in there financially in the interdepartment line. They're just now broken out in the personnel line. So that's what the comment, under the personnel section is referencing. But in regards to giving you guys a picture of what changed beyond that is what the comments below reference. So, had that change not increased the salaries line, salaries would have decreased based on employee retirements and new hires just coming in at a lesser cost. Medical insurance increased based on personnel selections and county allocation. And interdepartment charges, you'll see this for every single division. Last year, the GIS position was approved at a half year and broken out evenly amongst all 5 divisions. Next year, that will now be a full year, so that increases that line. The somewhat confusing part of this budget is the contractual services mixed with the revenue. 2024 was the first year that we had to reference where we had all of the zoning, all of the permitting, all of the actions going on in P and D. So we based a lot of these budget numbers off the activity of 24. So that's where you'll see 640,000 budgeted in 26 as opposed to the 290 budgeted in 25. And on the flip side, you'll see 600,000 in revenue and 195 in 25, 405 and 350 being the difference between the revenue and the expense, which was actually a reduction to the levy of the 55,000. That does come with a small caveat because right now we're reviewing the Salem Lakes contract. So that will come into the that will come into the works at the same time as they're gonna go to RFP for the vendor who does the building inspections with the townships. On top of, at that same time, we'll be reviewing the fees associated with the permits and zoning for planning development. So with all those things going on at once, come Q1 of next year, there will be likely a budget resolution that has some type of adjustment to the budget based out of the outcome of those 3 scenarios. I'll pause there for questions.
Supervisor Gears.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This approval, my question is, it includes the capital too?
Yeah,
Your intent is,
yeah,
so, so the budget does include the capital, and if I make a motion to approve it, include this Pike.
yeah, I was just pausing if there's any questions
Oh,
on this page. If
I'll,
none,
I'll yield and let him complete his report.
Vice Chair Gad.
Chris, do we anticipate that Salem Lakes will renew their contracted services with us, or is that hard to say?
there's interest, it just decides on whether there's interest on both sides of if it's worth the time and effort of what all it takes. So there's a possibility. I'll let Shelley answer anywhere that she feels fit. But
Yes, he's correct. We're still in talks with negotiations, so there's some contract modifications that we are requesting to be done. So they're reviewing those requests right now, and they're supposed to let us know in a few weeks. And we'll have a discussion at that point on what the new contract may look like, and then that's gonna come to the board.
And those modifications you mentioned, that would be to make it worth the county's while to make, yeah, to continue that, yeah. Okay. Thank you.
all right, so we'll flip to page 7, which is capital. The vehicle, actually, one of the comments on here was in regards to the fixed. Being a decrease for a half year of the sanitary and vehicle lease that was supposed to be ending Mid 2026, it was actually an accident and totaled, which actually got us out of the lease. The silver lining, I guess, in an unfortunate situation, but allows for this vehicle to be purchased if approved at the beginning of the year, and then we save on the lease dollars we would have otherwise spent. The South Pike River, the dollars here are what was presented in the presentation back in February, March-ish time. The project was approved, however, the financial aspect of that budget modification wasn't attached in that approval, so this is now approving the dollars that go along with that initial resolution. Page 8, I'll just jump to that quick. These are the small subdivisions of planning and development, the top 4, that is, the bottom 3 don't apply, but are miscellaneous to public works. These are all levy neutral with the exception of the Board of Adjustments. Based on actuals, I dropped that a whopping $215.
Good move.
And that is all of the.
Supervisor Gearston.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move approval of the budget, and if I get a second, then I'll make a comment.
Been moved by Supervisor Gearston, seconded by Supervisor Brookhouse.
Thank you,
You have the
Mr.
floor.
Chairman. I'm on this committee along with my colleagues that are also on the committee. And we approved it. We thought it was a good budget. The one thing I wanted to comment on is that they are reviewing the fees and the permits and that. So that is something that is under review. There was language in the budget resolution that we directed that there was a commitment that the county administration would gradually go through and review these fees and adjust them and bring them up to date. And in our committee meeting, there was a discussion that we expect this to be done for this division of county government by Q1 of 2026. So that is something that is underway there. So it looks like they're doing a good job of that. And but there were some issues with Silver Lake and a couple others that we wanted to let get settled so we can work our way through this. Is that correct?
Salem Lake, yeah.
Or Salem Lake,
Yeah.
sorry. So Salem Lakes. We have seen in other budgets a good job done. So for example, with our district attorney Solis, we saw him, he went through his budget with a fine tooth comb and adjusted fees there. We saw the Register of Deeds go through and adjust fees there. So I'm sensing that the administration was faithful to that directive we gave, that they're gradually going through and looking these fees. And to the degree they're able to get them complete, they did put them in the budget. To the degree that they're not done yet, they are working on them. So I believe that it looks to me, although we haven't gone through all these budgets yet, that the administration has been faithful to that element of the budget. And with that, I yield. Thank you.
Okay, Supervisor Kirby.
So just a point of clarification to Supervisor Gearston. So are those potential increased fees baked into this revenue
No.
number? Okay, so that would be on top of.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, rather than coming forth with something that could potentially change based off of what comes back in the contract or the RFP bid for the vendor, it just made more logical sense to us to have this all done at one time and have the whole impact of everything come forward at one time.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll just finish with, you did mention a silver lining for an accident. We're not advocating that as a budget role going forward, but. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That passes. Thank you.
Page 9 is the facility division. As notated at the beginning, this does contain a quarter increase for a custodian. The reason a quarter was chosen because Q4 would be the time that we should be moving into the human services building. This doesn't necessarily directly affect that building. It also does help with the 24-hour buildings, which need help for custodian use. And the hope being that with the approval of that position, we can hopefully lower some of the contracted services or temporary salaries by having a full-time position. So The salaries line overall has decreased with the reallocation of the project engineer position proposal.
And we would see that in the future budget. You're just putting a quarter in here now, but when we come forward in the future, we'll be able to see that offset.
Hopefully.
Okay, thank you.
The salaries temporary has increased based on department needs. This plays right into that statement right there. Hopefully that can stay level or decrease in future years. The medical insurance has decreased based on personnel selections and the county allocation. The interdepartment charges has increased based on the full year of the GIS position as notated and the reclass of the admin assistant senior. So this is the second part of the position reclass notated earlier. This is actually the admin assistant senior that currently resides in highways. That employee or that position is more roundly based in all of DPW, not specific to just highways. So logistically, again, they do a lot of work for facilities. So this position has now been allocated amongst the 4 bigger divisions, ultimately become 10% at golf, which is a $9,000 reduction in levy, which makes up the $5,000 that we had for the overall reduction. So full domino effect of how that works, but every other division going forward will have that very exact same language. That's just feel I won't need to repeat it every time. Utilities has increased based on the historical data and the job center building overlap. There will be probably a 2-month-ish period of time where both buildings are occupied by Kenosha County. So it includes utility costs and other contractual services as mentioned below that may overlap between the two. Machinery and equipment is increased based on the department needs. And then this personal protective equipment, it's a new line, but it's nothing new to the county. Last year, we broke out some lines like data processing costs that were buried in a different account. Some divisions currently have this line, some divisions don't. It just makes it more universal across the board, each division having that line broken out. By breaking it out, we reduce the building maintenance supplied by that same dollar. In regards to the revenue, we have income for the jail and traffic fines slightly increased based on the previous year actuals. Parking structure revenue has decreased slightly based on historical data. The safety building rental, this is the calculation that gets put together for the county city joint services based on the allocation that we have in 26, primarily because of the reduction in capital. Now reflects a reduction on the rental that each of those divisions have to pay towards. And finally, the sale of county property. This is a new line based on asset sales. Previously, any type of equipment in the capital would be traded in. In recent years, the county's found that it's got more value by auctioning these items. We auction them now, governmental assets can have that applied to the operations. Proprietary can't, it goes into the gain and loss account, but for the governmental facilities and parks, you'll see we've taken what we've kind of seen a little bit historically of what we're getting for that equipment and reduced it here in the operations budget. So I'll pause here. There is page 10 for your request last year. I warned you the font might be a little smaller, but to help summarize all 3 divisions of facilities, because we know that it can be hard to kind of gauge one versus the other. Here's the summary of 25 compared to 26 for each one of those divisions. So I'll pause there before going on to capital.
Supervisor Newton.
Okay, I had actually a couple of questions. One, you already answered about the sale of the county property. You answered that for me.
Good.
And the other one is on page 129 here. So sorry. Property insurance. You went from one projected 126 290 down to 106.9.
I'll give all that credit and thanks to Barna and his team.
I mean, insurance went down. Going down or?
Yeah, it's based on, this, not the square footage, but it's based on the different locations. A good question. I don't know why it would have gone down because
Yeah,
we're
because-
projecting property insurance going up, so.
Yeah,
My guess is that there might have been,
I was gonna ask, which insurance company did you use? So I'm gonna call them too, you know, cause mine went way up, so.
I'll find out the answer.
No, it's okay. I mean, that's what it is. It's just, caught my eye because everybody.
You can find out the answer and let us know, because that's a good question.
Yeah. So, okay. That was it. Thank you.
If no other questions, I'll roll over into the capital.
Oh, we're doing the capital. Okay.
I'll only go over the changes from what you've seen between the CIP meeting and what you see here. No changes to the actual project, just changes to the funding. Roof replacement for KCDC is less 975 grand. This comes from a repurposing rather, upon approval in April of 4 or 5 different projects that either came in under budget, were value engineered, or had extra budget just in there in case of things coming up. The one below that, the West End Tower, there should be 50,000 roughly left over from other tower projects going on right now. We're gonna take that money and repurpose it into this so we can decrease the bonding needs of next year. I'll pause there in case there's any questions. Let me flip to the next page. And I'm gonna flip. Page 12, we provide this every year. And every year we look over it. We may add things as they kind of come up. This comes from very large spreadsheets that are kept by the facilities department. And then we try to summarize the best we can to give you guys an overall picture of the plan and some of the age of some of the equipment that we're dealing with. I do have notated on here warm and cold storage as delayed. That comes in the roof replacement and the exterior, simply because you'll see that building in the highway CIP yet to be determined what the actual outcome of that building is, and it does not make sense to replace the roof if we end up taking down the building.
Yeah.
So that's the reason that you see delayed on this page. I'll flip to 13. This is now the safety, the PSB, the human services, and the capital projects. The only changes that you've seen since CIP is dorm enhancements was reduced by 50,000. That's simply just based on what they had time and availability to do. In order to do some of these things, they have to reallocate inmates, and if they can't do that, they can't spend the money. So that fund has enough money, with the addition of this 25 to do what's needed in the future. The crack replacement, computer room air conditioning unit, was previously 600,000 in 27. That was split between 26 and 27. At first it was because we just simply needed to balance out 27, but when asking Matt Strino, is this even feasible? He said, yes, it's in 2 different rooms. They can do the design, or they could work on 1 room and then do the second room next year. So that's why that was split. The other differences come in the capital projects. Energy efficiency projects, we reduced to 0. That fund has a good amount of balance. If you flip over to page 14, we give you a history of that fund and some of the ongoing projects. You'll see 2025 year to date, we've only spent just under 15,000. So similar to the dorm enhancement, it wouldn't make sense to just build a big kitty of money when we can use those funds on other projects. The major equipment replacement projects, it was reduced by 25,000 simply because of the fund balance of what we made into next year. And that all facilities.
Supervisor Kirby.
Move to approve?
It's been moved by Supervisor Kirby, seconded by Supervisor Kirsten to approve the facilities. Questions? Where are we on the Kemper work that we had asked for last year?
Shoreline?
No, the chapel and the things that were going on with that.
I think that they're still in the design. They should be, it was a winter project, staying out of the season and trying to be done by spring, but I'll let.
Yeah, sorry. Working with an architect right now who's finalizing all the plans and specs for it. Once the plans and specs are done, we're moving right into bidding. And construction should happen through the winter like we planned, so that there's not an interruption to their event schedule. So we're working with an architect right now who has a history with historic buildings. And they're gonna be delivering that. Well, I'm meeting with the Kemper board actually on Thursday to finalize some decisions. I want them to have a hand in what color for the paint, what type of carpeting, so that it matches what they're looking to do. So once I meet with the Kemper board on Thursday, we should have all our questions answered and be moving to bid.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? That passes. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the Division of Parks, this is page 15. Very little overall changes in here. You'll see the salaries increased just based on the annual increases. Seasonal salaries, as discussed earlier, decreased based on the planned carryover usage. This again may be one of the spots where we may not even need to do this, but will be looked at as we get closer to the end of the year and close out of that year. The retirement has decreased based on the seasonal allocation from finance. The interdepartment charges is the full year of the GIS and the admin reclass. And we have other operating supplies increased just based on the historical cost. The building maintenance supplies decreased only by that 10,000, which is the planned carryover if needed. And then the fixed, it is increase in building insurance, but a larger decrease in the liability insurance. This again shares that sale of county property, this being slightly larger than the facilities at 10,000, which goes with some of the historical costs we've seen at auction. I'll pause there before flipping. All right. Page 16 is the CIP. Only a couple of changes here. Park building roof replacements increased by 75,000. This is due to the recent survey that we had done on all of the roofs within Kenosha County, or the roofs as a part of the survey. Some of the ones recently done didn't need to be surveyed. And this will go towards either the pets maintenance building or the Brightendale maintenance building. I believe the CIP specifically says pets, but both buildings that showed up on the survey, and will go toward whichever one requires the most love. The Kemper shoreline, for the offset of the 140 grand that goes towards that design, being that we know that it's a critical project to supervisors, it's not getting pushed out rather than pushing out other projects in replace of it. We've used some of the parkland to offset that initial design phase of that. KCVMP Memorial Shelter and the CIP, the total is 163,500, which was per the resolution that funds from those highway F sale remnant parcels were to stay within KCVMP. We just increased that to 174,000 to make it easy that the whole shelter is in place from parkland. And since we mentioned parkland so much there, and at the beginning, now it has its own little box. On page 17, you'll see just kind of a high level overview of how that parkland development helps offset some of the use of funds, some of the projects and studies and assessments that have been done, and then what's proposed in 26. And that is parks.
Have we started talking to somebody about that renovation study or the shoreline study?
Yeah, I believe that they're using or talking to the same engineer company that did the city. I know Wyatt's had a couple conversations, so
I can speak on that a little bit. So I've been working with Red Barn Design and Engineering. The lead architect there, his name is Matthew Wright. He did a lot of the city shoreline. So he did First Avenue, he did over Kennedy Park, and his fee is what's in the capital budget here. That'll be to design a very similar shoreline for the Kemper Center. So I have a memo here if anyone would like to see it that talks about two options that we can do. One that builds out a break wall around the Kemper Center, and then one that cuts through the contours of the existing shoreline and rebuilds it, so it's a nice, clean, even shoreline, very similar to what you see at First Avenue in Kennedy Park.
So we're in the middle of that. Good, thank you. All right. Supervisor Nudo. It's been moved by Supervisor Nudo, seconded by Supervisor Gearston to approve. Any other questions or comments on this section? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Moving right along to golf. This is page 18 in the package. Salary increase again, just based on annual employee increases. Salaries OT, this is a new line. It's based on some of the personnel changes that happened as a part of 2025. Some of the employee positions went from salary to hourly, and therefore also equates to having an overtime line. The salary is temporary, increase just based on the department needs. The interdepartment charges, again, GIS position, admin assistant reclass. The data processing has increased based on historical, and the supplies and sales tax have all increased on historical. It's been yet again another record year for golf. Keep saying that we don't plan on having it, but we do. Very fortunate for that. But the way that we budget is conservatively. We don't budget banking on a record year, so that's why you see this total at 4.4 rather than around the 5s, which it's been in the last 3 years. Pause there before going for capital, in case there's any questions.
Seeing none,
Capital, no changes actually from what you saw on the CIP. Everything is exactly the same.
Supervisor Gearston.
Mr. Chairman, move approval of the golf budget.
Moved by Supervisor Gearston, seconded by Supervisor Nava. Any questions or comments on the golf portion? May we keep having record years. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes.
All right. Highways Division. There are a few personnel proposals. The first one being Highways Director changing to Highways Director / Assistant Director of PW. This comes not only as a future succession plan, but allows availability for the unavailability of the director. They can help provide some depth to the department, being that the director may be away on either conferences, calls, vacation, whatnot. Services don't stop until they'll go through the assistant director. The mechanic is being reclassified to a fleet inventory specialist. There was one correction to here to what was emailed out. The email contained E12 to E12, NE12 to NE12. All of your packets have been replaced with that, but if you're looking at the email, that's one change. And then the admin assistant, I kind of already talked about it, but it was already in highways. It's been reallocated amongst the other divisions. So you'll see that coming out of personnel and coming back somewhat into the interdepartment line, which is why that increased along with the GIS position. So jumping into the bulk of it, salaries increased based on the annual employee raises outweighing the transfer out of the admin senior. Salaries OT decreased just based on historical data. Mainly we've had some mild winters. Knock on the wood that we don't get slammed and have a budget blown, but we can only budget based off what we've been seeing. The retirement increased due to the county allocation. Medical insurance, same thing. In the department, we've touched on other professional services. So you'll see a large increase in this budget line. Specifically this budget line within the contractual services, because we have every 2 years, there's bridge inspections that need to happen, and that constitutes 65 grand of the increase. On top of, earlier in the year, resolution 89, which involved the stormwater grant, for runoff. The county received that. It cost 75,000. The county receives 35,075, which is why you see a very specific state revenue number of 3885075, just to put emphasis on that's part of the grant that the county will be receiving. The miscellaneous contractual services has decreased based on some of the department needs. Right now, the pit is filled with aggregate, so they don't need to do aggregate crushing, so thus we do not need funds for that. The personal protective equipment, same as what was kind of talked about earlier, it's just breaking out of the other operating supplies to be more universal amongst the department. The other operating supplies, this is the other 25 grand that was planned with the carryover usage and why it was reduced. The fuel was reduced just based on our internal evaluation. We keep a spreadsheet that keeps the averages of the total gas used per year and the dollars spent on it. Obviously, winter plays a big role into that. As we've had less mild winters, we've used less gas, thus we need less gas fuel dollars. Salt decreased based on what we already talked about. The budget resolution language is already there for us to do this specific carryover, which helps in next year. And then fixed is increase in building insurance and larger decrease in liability. The reason I'm only somewhat comfortable in trying to prepare for these carryover resolutions or carryovers as a part of this budget is because of lines like the other professional services where we shouldn't need roughly 100 grand of those dollars next year. Now, the following year, we're gonna need at least half of it again. And I'm sure other studies may come up or whatnot, but at least for what we know right now, we can use some of those funds to offset this carryover and not need to go down that unsustainable path. Along with that, I'm just gonna jump to the general transportation aid dollars. We've been warning that this is gonna go down. We got a little bit of a surprise this year because as part of that calculation is the sheriff. So as much grief as they've gotten for blowing their budgets and not coming up with revenue, that net difference does play into this GTA calculation, which thus helps highway. So thank you, Sheriff. The other part of that is there has been an increase from the state to this specific account. It's just for the 2 years. We weren't planning on it. We do our internal calculation. Last year we missed by around 100,000, which was only 0.5% of that number, but a miss. This year we played it more conservatively. We were actually on the positive side by 50 grand. And because of the way that the schedule of these weeks worked out, we were actually able, for the first time that I know of, able to put that very specific number of what's being given to us estimated in 26 into the budget. So there isn't any miss higher or lower. That is why you see 5,063,500. Now, it shows as a decrease from 25 to 26, but that's because last year we estimated 5.1 and it came in at pretty close to 5 million flat. So it's a decrease on what you guys are seeing, but in reality, it's an increase. Next year, we have one of our lower years of this 6-year calculation fall off. So we may potentially see another increase next year, which is why it plays into this carryover. However, after that, Highway S falls off and we're expecting a very large decrease. So not much to worry about, at least now, but in 2 budget cycles, it will be somewhat of an issue. Unless something changes, unless they give more funding or other calculations increase that, but that's my forewarning. 2 budgets from now. The only other thing that I'll speak on here, you'll see $100,000 decrease on the sale of county property. This is not the equipment that goes to auction. This is a proprietary fund, so it doesn't get treated the same. We actually had agreements with Thielen to mine a lot of the pit. They are no longer doing that, so thus no longer royalty. And I know that was a lot of information, so I'm going to pause there before we go to the next page.
Supervisor Kirby.
So I know like how the state aid formula works. Do we, is this drop off something that we can't help at this point, or do we have a plan?
So to help try and offset some of that, that's why you see things like in the capital where we took some of these things that used to be in facilities and are now putting them into highways, just simply because now they get charged to the highway account to get put into these calculations. But other than that, no, unless we start spending money on big projects, which we do have W, we do have K coming down the line, but not likely in enough time where between when S falls off and when this does. So it's a 6-year calculation, so you get a decent spread. The average is around 23-ish million.
Mhm.
The year that we had S, it was 39 million. So when that falls, we're gonna fall pretty hard.
But do we have kind of I was just kind of thinking like, so actually at the WCA conference I sat in and learned more about transportation funding. And what they talked about is just having a plan, like we know these sections of highway are going to need to be worked on. So just kind of planning it out so you don't see that big drop in funding, but on this, you don't think there's a way
Yeah,
to,
S was kind of its own
S was
little
big.
monster.
okay.
That was probably, what, 3 times the size, 4 times, 5 times the size of any other road project that we typically have.
So we don't really want to spend that kind of money regularly.
Yeah. F. No, highway S. So, I will flip to the page 21. This is the highway equipment. The only changes that you'll see is the tractors. That was 280 in 26 and nothing in 27. That was for 2 tractors. Those were split between 26 and 27. And then as notated in that CIP meeting, tandem axle trucks were dropped by 300,000, which is pretty much allocating the money that we had in previous budgets for single axle trucks that the department is kind of going away from and reallocating it towards trucks that they're trying to utilize more. On page 22, we'll kind of give you an overview of the vehicles that if we were to go by the DOT standards of their useful life, what we would need to be able to keep up with that. Obviously very unrealistic, but just to give you an idea for when we're approving the budgets and we're asking for between $1 million and $2 million, some of the justification and why that would be. The bottom section just kind of gives you an overview of what each piece of equipment that you see in that CIP, what it's used for in the summer and what it's used for in the winter. Just kind of for your benefit, this year, obviously, we added pictures to the CIP, so that also helps in knowing what that piece of equipment is. And I'll just keep going right on to the project section. The transportation infrastructure improvements, this was dropped by roughly 640,000. Reason being, it had previously been budgeted for at 13 miles, which is a commitment of the department to try and do. However, they've seen historically closer to about 11.5. This year, even under that. So amongst what we've historically done and the amount of money that we have carrying over, it doesn't make sense to just kind of keep building a kitty, and we've reduced that for what you see in 26. The other adjustment was for Highway W, the state line to C. It was decreased by $1 million. It was simply pushed to 27. They still need those funds, but how it likely works out and when those bills come and when they're going to be paid, we simply broke it out to help the balancing. Actually, because there's so many projects now, because we added so many different things that otherwise fall in facilities, it's now 2 pages. Highway K, phase 2, same exact justification for Highway W. It was 1.3. We moved out to 300,000 just based on when we would like to spend those funds. On the page 25, you'll see a map, obviously tentative, subject to change, but that shows you roughly 12.5 miles that if they have time and availability to do, these are what they're looking at right now. And I will pause there because the last page doesn't necessarily pertain to highways.
Supervisor Gerstin. Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the highway budget.
Been moved by Supervisor Gearston, seconded by Supervisor Kirby. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor?
I,
Any opposed? That passes. Thank you.
All right, so the very last page, it's always just been kind of referred to as the other detail that you see in the budget. Some of this is what you saw as a part of the P&D budget. Others is, 911 dispatch. You actually do see a reduction in that this year. As part of the capital projects, they had a ERP project, that took on a lot of, phone lines that are used here. There's still a couple remaining, so that's why it's not completely dropped down to zero. In the top half, you'll see it go from 38,000 down to 12,005, which is what makes up that difference at the bottom of the 25,000 reduction in levy. The rest are all pretty much levy neutral and embedded in the other projects, but it's just FYI. That is everything I got.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. We're gonna take a 5-minute break. All right, we'll get back after it. Sheriff, you have the floor.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate your time and being here tonight. Thanks for the help over the last year. We've been very, very busy, as you know. And as I'm sure you're all aware, we have a tentative agreement with the Deputy Sheriff Association, which is a bit lower off. It's always a tumultuous time and tensions run a little bit, but it's put to bed, and I appreciate the county board doing that. So our enforcement efforts continue to be very high. We're very, very busy. Jail's full, a lot of folks in custody. Some good drug arrests lately, one of our phones up for streets. Our numbers for enforcement, a lot of calls for service. WI arrests, I think you're sure all aware. I want to thank all of you for the help with the Summers situation. We did a speed reduction initiative earlier in the year, if you remember. It's been incredibly successful, so appreciate the little bit extra money for the overtime that you approved then, and it's very successful. I don't know if this is going to go our way as far as the state's concerned, and I kind of think they're going to do what they're going to do anyway, but nevertheless, we've made a huge impact out there. So we've been very busy working through a series of promotions, a lot of interviews through Deputy Sheriff, Correctional Officer, all that, but a series of promotions as we're dealing with attrition. As you all know, Captain Klinkhammer, I'll point him out back there, he's trying to hide. Captain Klinkhammer is retiring, end of the year, so we're losing quite, he's gonna leave a deficit of talent behind. So we've been succession planning for a long time, and I'm really optimistic about the direction we're gonna be heading in. And he's staying in town, so we can call him. So we're gonna hire you back as a contractor right away. So he is a very, very, well-earned retirement, so God bless him. We continue to capitalize on our training opportunities. Then, I pointed this out right when I became the sheriff. I wanted to cross-train. We spent a lot of money for training, as you all know, and I wanted to make sure that we were utilizing those resources and cross-training people. We have several new officers that have gone through instructor development classes to become real instructors, and we do that consistently. So we're capitalizing on that. It's no secret that narcotics investigations are a big thing for me. We push that pretty heavy, but what we just continue to see are the predator crimes. You see them in the media all the time. So we have sensitive crimes investigators, and it's on a personal level. It's a big burnout area. So I want to cross that over more. I want to get more people involved in it so they can rotate out if that's possible. They're very passionate about what they do. So giving up the reins is something so invested in is difficult, but that's another one of my plans. Looking forward to next year. Hopefully we can identify some redundancies or some duplication of services. As everyone here at this table knows, very expensive place to run. It's a very expensive gig. Public safety is expensive, but at the same time, there is redundancy in some places. And if we can identify that and we can save some money in a lot of different key areas, really looking forward to do that. As you know, personnel is our big expense. So I appreciate doing that. Appreciate the cooperation now with that. So the government shutdown is something I talked about with JLEC last week. Obviously, that's still in play, but, to my surprise, we were notified by the government that they weren't gonna be funding the contracts like the marshals, which weren't gonna get a check for the time being. But we received our September invoice of 109,000, which I just want to let Patty and Byron know that came through, so cash flow isn't completely done at this point. I want to talk about, we recently participated in an FBI drug raid. You probably saw it in the media, 20-some people were taken into custody. The reason I point that out is because 20 of those suspects were taken in, are housed here. And a couple of them are bonded out, but at this point, we're doing real good in those numbers. Just wanted to bring that up to your attention. It wasn't our investigation, but we have task force officers, the federal partners, and one of our guys participated in that capacity. So if you all have the budget summary, I'll start touching on that, and I know I'll be pushed out of the way in short order, as you've seen. But so for 26, these are the kind of the highlights that drive our budget summary. So for 26 budget proposal, obviously 43.5 million represents a 9.8% increase from the 25 adopted budget. And I was going to go over exactly what that looks like. Our estimated operating expenditure up from 6%, 2.9 million from the 25 adopted budget. Talk about the contracts, where that comes from. And our revenue is decreasing 10.31% from the 25, and that's going to have to do with the RMR contract. We'll cover that as well. Or if you jump in right there.
So moving on to page 2, we'll jump into, what the budget drivers of change are, by appropriation. I don't know how you guys, if you want me to hit personnel and then you guys can ask questions, or if we want to save them for the end up to you guys, if you want.
You go ahead and make your presentation. If we have questions, we'll stop and we'll ask them.
Perfect. Sounds good. So first of all, personnel. 4.64% increase or change of about 1.8 million. 900,000 of that increase is for salaries, retirement, medical insurance. This also reflects the updated rates for the tentative agreement. And buried in there, you don't necessarily see it separated out, is the reduction of 8.6 FTEs in our kitchen staff. And the reason for that is our earmark contract. So the favorability of those reductions are reflected in that line. And then you'll see an increase as we get into it later of the earmark contract.
What's the net? Old to new.
So it's actually a small net benefit savings of about $30,000. But it also is dependent on how many inmates we have in custody that we're supplying.
But I mean, your estimates are going from that to this
Yes,
new
it was a
one
very small.
is a slight savings.
Correct.
Okay,
It was basically.
thank you.
Mhm.
Supervisor Kirby.
Oh, yeah. So what was the exact, so you were asking about the Aramark contract, right? So what was the total, value of the reduction of the 8.6 FTEs, just so I could break that part up? Yeah, I believe it was. $650,000.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions on personnel? Okay. Contractual services. So we're projecting a 20.55% increase, or about $1 million. That's primarily made up of about 700,000 increase in our medical provider cost with VitalCore. That does reflect our contract rate for year 2 with them. 160,000 is coming from the addition of our CDOG grant expense. And there is a revenue that offsets that. So typically, you guys probably have seen that come into committee in the past as we get those approvals. We have gotten that grant the last 5 years, so we just built it into the budget. Just because sometimes with the timing of it, it's a little bit of a scramble to get it approved in time.
If you remember, we're jumping through, trying to get the committee in time, end of the year.
It's still gonna be brought to the committee, but we just have it in here. Okay.
Correct.
All right.
Yeah, it's built in. And then we also have, in addition, for our officer wellness program of about 150,000.
Where's that coming from? That's what it's gonna cost?
So it's technically like 170, but
Okay.
it's like within here, it's about 100. We have a little bit that's offsetting it. We had a grant that's not gonna repeat, so some of the expense came off for this year. We'll be back in play in 27. So net between that and then the officer wellness program, it's about $150,000 change.
Okay.
And then I don't know if anyone has questions on. Moving on to supplies, so that's about a 20.6% increase or change of about $400,000. 700,000 of that is the increase for the Airmark contract, and again, is being offset in our personnel. We also have a 200,000 decrease in pharmaceutical. That's one that we're gonna have to monitor. We've had a handful of invoices from Diamond. We recently changed, I believe it was in April. So we've had a handful of invoices and that appears to kind of be like what the amount has been. So it's something we'll have to monitor as we go through the year just to see if there's any, changes and what that could be. Obviously, all dependent on inmate population. And then we have about $100,000 decrease in our equipment. And that's just moving some items that were eligible to be capitalized over to capital. So we were just moved it from operating into capital. I don't know if anyone has questions. Supplies.
Roll on.
For fixed charges, it's going up about 24.38%. This is probably a common theme that you guys have heard amongst other areas too. That's just an allocation based on a recent actuary study. So this is the portion that was pushed down once.
Increases except for on gate fund.
Yeah, that's property.
And then moving on to revenue. So we're projecting about a $1 million decrease there in our budget. 600,000 of that is from our federal inmate revenue. In 25, it was assumed that we would basically sit at a run rate of 50 federal inmates. We're currently year-to-date sitting closer to 32 on average. So in this budget, we're pulling that count down to 35, which is more achievable
I like it.
for us based on what we've seen to date.
Supervisor Nudo.
This year, I have a question. Let's see, maybe I don't understand that right. We had the budget at 50 for 25, and now we're going down to 35. I understand going down. However, what I really don't understand is I believe, and I might be wrong, but I believe we've been running probably at an average of less than 30 this year. And with what's going on with all the federal, and they're gonna really deport everybody, we're probably gonna see a decrease in there. So why do we have 35? Do you feel comfortable in getting the 35 or why did we put
What you're
35?
saying,
back?
sir, is absolutely possible, right? And I addressed it previously, at JLEC, that because of what's going on with, this administration and immigration, they have reallocated resources, federal resources all over the place, which is why you see so many of the, task force officers very engaged, very busy, because they're utilizing all the personnel they can. So what the marshals are gonna do as far as housing, I don't know. But I can tell you from the arrest we participated in this past week, that we got 20 of those individuals. So we're at 48, or we were at 50 marshals, we're at 48 right now, some bonded out. So I don't have an answer for you, but I believe in my heart of hearts, 35 is a much more realistic number. And it keeps us from a real scare deficit at the end of the year. So I think that number is responsible.
Okay, so basically, you answer.
And I'm being nice with the marshal.
I guess, well, because like you said, we have 50, but 20 of them were for the raid that we just
I
had
appreciate it.
or whatever. So, which you will bring us, otherwise, it would have been 30, basically, with the front. But you feel comfortable though with the 35, putting the 35 number?
I do. A lot
Not
more
a number just to put it in there, but, you don't feel comfortable with that.
I feel comfortable.
You guys feel comfortable?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for questioning.
Yeah, and this is my 18th budget. Only Supervisor Grady has seen more budgets. And I've constantly been battling bringing this number down to an achievable level. And it was always, it used to be goofy. We'd play with the revenue to just see if we could increase revenue and we'll take a chance. We'll move it up to 135 this year or something, I mean, I've never wanted to budget that way. I mean, obviously we can't bring it down to zero, but I'm comfortable with your assessment and where you're going with this. And I'm glad that you're looking at it and giving it thought.
Just
So
like you, like we discussed, which is both, I think you and I are both on the same page, where we want to be more realistic. And
Oh,
I want to give.
that's gonna be my theme with you, yeah.
I want to give.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions on, okay, I'll continue down. $300,000 reduction in our ARPA revenue. Obviously, that benefit ceases, going into 26. Our budget also reflects a reduction of about 200,000 in extended supervision based on some of the trends and court trends we've been seeing. And then we also have a $200,000 increase for law enforcement village contracts. And again, that rate includes, the tentative agreement. Any questions on?
Supervisor Nudo?
Just see exactly what it is. This extended supervision, what is it for?
It's the courts. It's not something that we control.
Right, but I mean, I just wanted to.
That's just that's the trend. What's that, sir? It's DOC. Yeah, Department of Corrections, excuse me.
Okay,
It's the way it's trended.
like when you guys gotta take one of the prisoners or whatever to
Right, so
court.
there's revenue gained by that, so, less of them on extended supervision.
Okay, I just wanted to understand what it is.
Sure,
Thank you.
thank you.
Supervisor Poole?
What's the $200,000 increase for village contracts, which village?
So it's across all villages.
That is absolutely indicative of the contractual raise. And they're aware of it, and it's, their fees are gonna go up based on the salaries of the deputy sheriffs.
Technically didn't go up much, and I appreciate that.
Well, we can-
It's just,
I think we need to look at that.
That and see if we.
Instead of dollars, it's just the numbers of
I don't know that I'd say that.
Well,
No, not you.
yeah.
It just, these law enforcement village contracts, are those the contracts that Supervisor Belsky's been asking about? That's all of those contracts?
That's-
And this number you're giving us right here is just pertinent to the increase in the upcoming increase in salaries and stuff, or?
Yes, there's a little nuance in there just because we have, because of the way that and the timing of how the contracts, are approved. So what happened last year is that we put in what we estimated the numbers to be. They came in a little bit higher. So what we're actually taking in 25 is slightly higher than budget. It's just when you look from 25 to 26, it looks like a massive number, but it's only because of the timing of the approvals.
So when are those contracts up?
December 31st, and then new contracts start January. So we work in between like September, like mid-September-ish through now, and then everybody, I assume, takes their contracts through for.
It goes to the county.
The
villages approve them.
And then the county
executive, the sheriff and the county executive sign off on it.
Okay.
Any other questions on the revenue component? Capital outlay is decreasing about $500,000. And that's primarily, as we're all aware, the pause in our squads, due to.
There's no trucks in this budget, correct?
Update on the upfitting, we're about halfway done.
Thank
You're
you.
gonna do it 20 more left.
This is the end of this. There's also in the appendix section, just for your reference, some charts that show historical trends for overtime. You know, just so it kind of shows here how by adding the 900,000, we're kind of closing in on that gap of, what our actuals have been versus how we've budgeted historically. So that's there for your reference. And then, after that, we have just a page on federal inmate revenue trends as well. If there was any questions.
Supervisor Kirby.
So I do want to say, I'm happy to see that we're moving the overtime budget closer to what we're actually seeing. Do you feel like that's a realistic goal, what we're budgeting? Given that we do have salary increases, I know there's other things that are going on that you're hoping to bring costs down. But does that number feel like something that you can actually achieve?
Well, we're right, to give you an indication as to where we are for, she can tell you where we're pacing, but we're pacing right where we thought we would for 25. So looking at that number, we're right on point where we thought we would be. You know, we have been and continue to be reducing there's not really a lot of unnecessary overtime, but we pull back on the events and things like that. But you know, as you know, public safety is our priority, and things that happen, there's a lot of things that take place, like big calls for service, huge crashes, incidents, investigations. Like I can get a phone call right now, or captain can call me and say, 3 detectives are on the way to Sauk County right now. We've done that a couple of times this year, so we've had some very expensive investigations, but you know, that thing happens, but we have to be we will continue to be very vigilant with it and forthright. And, you know, if we come forward with, you all keep track of the overtime pretty steadily anyway, but we'll continue to do that. That's right, to where it's at every time and what's going on in that quarter, what have you, is what's driving the plan. So we're all aware. It's just for price.
Okay. Yeah, and I do understand that this is not necessarily within your control. I just kind of wanted to get a feel for, you know, do you think we're really going to spend that, or do you think it is going to be higher?
I don't know if it will be higher, but I think it's a much more realistic.
It's probably gonna be higher.
Probably, but I wanted to, what I like to say is I appreciate the candor and I appreciate, Patty and Barnum working so hard with that, because it's not easy to do, to get that number. There's a lot going on in the budget, and which is part of it, so. But we know where we're at right now, and I wouldn't expect it to be less next year. So that's true.
Okay.
Okay, I have worked with your staff and with you on this overtime issue for years. I remember Supervisor Grady going after it years ago. I've tried to, and it's not, my comments and my discussions with you as with the chief deputy are not, you know, I mean, I want to work together to figure it out, which your staff has been very cooperative, and I appreciate it. I actually like them, just so you know. But that being said, 3.11, we're not going to hit that. We're going to probably be at 3.9. If anybody wants to write that down, that's my estimate. So my question to Barna and to you is, where is that 800,000 coming from? Because we're in my mind, we're going into this budget knowing we have a hole.
Potentially from vacancy and other places in their budget. They have a $51 million budget. 800,000 is 2% of that, so.
Okay. We'll see how that goes. And I am very appreciative that we are moving towards realistic budget numbers. And ultimately, my goal is to get where that estimate is. Are we ever going to get rid of overtime? Well, not in anybody's wildest imagination, nor am I asking for that. I just want to be, I mean, when you budget 1.2 million and you come in at 4, that's a big miss. And it's a big hole for the county to have to come up with. So we need to get to the point where we're fairly close. Are there years we're gonna blow it out because we've got an active shooter out there and we've got 2 days of this or that? Yeah, it could happen, you know, and I understand that. But we need to try to get to where we're going, and I appreciate the candor of our finance department here telling me, Jeff, hold your horses, we can't go all at once. All right, that's the way it is. I can appreciate that. But that is a number that I'm gonna be watching, and it's no, you know, it's no reflection on you or how you guys do your thing. It's just where we need to be from a numbers and a budgeting standpoint. So that's where I'm coming from. Of that 3.11, is there any of that that's going somewhere else? To the mental health, to anywhere, or is that 3.11 literally a overtime number?
So there is 100,000 built in there for backfill OT for, officer wellness program.
So we're at 3.01. Cause we're 100,000 off for that, right? All right.
If I may, with the officer wellness program, if you have questions, actually our therapist is here, who's put that program together, but the reality is we don't know the number of people that are actually going to utilize it for service. It won't be 100%, but you know.
Well, it's our first year. We don't have actual numbers. I get it, you know, but I'm trying to reach a number on overtime that is real. Do I think that we need that mental health aspect for the deputy and supervisor? Yes, we do. That's not in question. I'm looking at where the numbers are and where they're going. I mean, you're too good. I don't have anything else to argue about. It's really Chair Uhas, Vice Chair, Supervisor, whatever you want. Chair Uhas.
Thank you. Regarding your contracts with the villages, I know you said they have gone up due to the tentative agreement with salaries. Are they also going to be adjusted for the amount of calls for service for each municipality?
I have to be negotiated in the town. Hope we could.
Because you know that there have been calls in certain areas that have gone up. And I know Supervisor Belsky has been trying to get that information for months.
We've been
gotten that.
working with her and working with Captain Blake Cameron, I believe, he gave her that.
Yeah, she has some pretty in-depth, data-driven questions. That report will be ready for the next year.
So those numbers will be available to go into those contracts. Those contracts will reflect current costs and calls for service.
I think if you're talking about increasing staffing to cover calls for service, I'm not sure how we would do that. The contracts are already to the villages for 2026. So that would be something to look at for next year based on the data over the next year.
Okay, can I ask you, when Supervisor Belsky, how long ago did she ask for this information regarding calls for service?
I mean, we've been given the entire board calls for service. The specific things she asked for, we got it, I would say 30 days ago. That was when I saw it, right? Again, they're pretty data driven, and it's not something that we have, you know, our data analysts has to make those tables and extract that data. It's not something that we already have that record of, right? The questions that she asked, those are not just, some of them are, but there are some that are pretty deep for her to have to build. And again, I'm not an IT person or a data analyst, like pivot tables and all that good stuff. Sounds smart. So for basically our entire existence of our contracts, the data wasn't tracked because of the way our dispatch system. So when I came on board, we changed some things, made that so we could track that data. But it's approximately, we've been at that for less than a year. So I'm not sure, we're gonna give you data. I'm not sure how you take that data at that point for just that short period of time. So
we haven't been delaying, we've been doing the monthly report. The calls for service for each village are in those monthly reports. And we've now been asked by Supervisor Bilski for an analysis of that, which we are.
So do these contracts that are going to be effective for 2026 show charges for call for service? Are they gonna reflect?
The actual calls for
Yeah.
service?
The villages,
Yeah, they're not, so it's kind of like Mr. Gantz wanting, the overtime budget to be realistic and our federal inmates, they're not have too high of a number, right? The villages are big percent, right? They're not really willing to negotiate that. They have to have whether it's our contractor or their own department, right? And it's way more cost effective to have us, but when we start having those conversations about actuals, it's.
So then basically the taxpayers of Kenosha County are footing the bills for the smaller municipalities who don't have law enforcement. They're paying the additional cost for that law enforcement to serve that community.
I would say it's pretty accurate. Your work's not mine. If anyone's listening.
I'm just trying to figure this out.
So again, and the sheriff may be able to talk about, but I would sat in on those with, the old sheriff, right? Certain village administrators just don't want to have those conversations, right? Or it becomes political, we're less important than, you have it's a statutory argument of you have to provide services, but, that's not the case, right? They have to provide their services once they incorporate, right? Whether it's by their own agency or us. So obviously, like I said, obviously the cost savings is with us, but whenever we bring bigger numbers, talking about bankrupting the villages. So there are ongoing conversations, and I know that Supervisor Bilski is very proactive in getting those more realistic, right? But I think just like our budget, right? If you just go at these municipalities with double or tripling them, because that's what it really is going to be, double or tripling that contract. Fiscally, I don't know how they can do it without having to raise their tax savings. So I don't know what the right answer is. I can just say there's comprehensive. I would say they're not super productive.
And I know it's fair, I'm leaving it from both sides.
Yeah, I know.
So I'm just trying to get clarification, so I have the information when I'm talking to leaders of different villages and they're saying something, and then I'm here at the county board. You're in the middle and you're getting two sides to an issue.
so you can look at the data. And we have been, as I'm preparing this report. The majority of calls for service are answered by the contract car that's in that village. But if another emergency comes out, we're gonna go.
Right.
And even if it was the Village of Summers have their own police department, and their guys were busy, we would go because we're the sheriff. And we would handle those calls. So there's that aspect of it too. So there are calls for service, the non-contract deputies take, and that data will all be in that report. And I didn't want to split it with 2 or 3 or 6 months of data. I think we have to look at this long term. And we're just now able to gather that data.
So do you base how many cars, is it based on population?
It's,
How does a community decide, or how do you decide?
if you take Summers, for example, they started out with 1 car in day shift. Then they added a car in second shift. Now they've added another squad on second shift and a squad on third shift. And that's based on how busy that village has been.
Okay.
So it's slowly increasing, but, the villages do have us to fall back on. And I'm not saying we're being taken advantage of, but I think as a community of law enforcement, we have to help. And I'm not leaving my deputy hanging out in Summers because they're not paying for another deputy.
And I think we could operate like some big municipalities, right, where they have stack calls or they don't, their citizens aren't seen because there's just too many calls for service for that village. And I just don't think that's not really how we want to operate. It's not really, but it isn't how we want to operate. And I don't think it's fair to the community, right, to have to wait, 24 to 48 hours to file a burglary report or, even a simple petty theft, right? So you have to weigh the pros and the cons. So if we went to the model, like, I think that's being talked about where just that village car goes to anything that is not emergent, right? Then you could stack calls and they would be waiting in 24, 48, 72 hours for filing simple reports, where we'd have more traffic at the front counter, which is not going to do anybody any good, right? Because then we'll have to maintain a desk duty person to take those initial complaints. So it's kind of like my detentions solutions. There's not a good one. If we can come up with one, I think, it's in the best interest of everyone to try to figure out some middle ground, but it's just those conversations are I don't have them. I mean, that's a sure.
And it's not as often, but Pleasant Prairie, we don't charge them.
Right.
We go into the city of Kenosha when they need assistance. If they're super busy or they have a huge call, we go in and answer calls for service and we don't charge them. Obviously, it's not on the scale of our traditional patrol areas where deputies are filling it. But, I completely understand where you're coming from about the other side of it. But, we will have that data report due to, you guys by the next year.
And we push for all those villages that have deputies, and you can ask any of their administrators that we ask all the time, right? Sometimes, I would say Salem's had a couple over the last couple of years, like, that's a large geographical area. Summers is, bits and pieces here and there, but it's much different than when I was a kid in Summers, but it's very busy now, right? Walmart. Guys could have their own, they could have their own substation in Walmart.
That's not much time to spend there. That's just not right.
They get charged by the village per ball. So, but that creates other issues because.
Hold on. No, Supervisor Robinson, go ahead.
Okay, so, well, I'll fix that, and then I'll ask my other question that I was gonna say. So if we're spending, we basically have a substation in Walmart, and the village charges Walmart for the call, does the village then come around and reimburse the county for having that person there? Or is it a revenue base for Summers that is that?
I don't know the answer to the revenue part of it, but, essentially, I would say 90%, and Captain Clinton will correct me well, that at least 95% of the time is the business squad that's going to those calls because they're non-emergent, right? Walmart holds 2-3 at a time unless they're an active shoplifter, right?
We've taken steps with Summers to reduce the amount of manpower and hours spent at Walmart. And that's in cooperation with Summers because they realized that their contract deputy was getting eaten up by Walmart. So we've worked together, we've met with Walmart, we've come up with systems to reduce that time. Summers does have an ordinance that essentially charges Walmart if they go above a certain number of calls for service. They haven't yet reached that. I don't believe Summers is actually charged for that. That's not fair.
I understand kind of that little sub conversation. Okay, my other question, in trying to understand, again, I'm hearing, that we're getting the data and it's recent data. So, if we haven't had the exact data that we needed, we're getting that now. So we're getting the history. What I'm hearing, the contracts with the villages are not, We are not gonna have that data and we are not gonna be able to present that during this year. Has there been discussion with the villages as you're presenting these contracts saying, heads up, we are developing this data. We are looking at the calls for service. Yes, the county is always, in a sense, the backup. That is our duty. We are not gonna want stacking. We want service. Public service is important, but it isn't right that somebody, whether it's in the city or whether it's in Pleasant Prairie or whatever, is basically funding, another village. People do have to realize that they are paying for it one way or another. They are paying through their taxes. They're either paying for our overtime that you're struggling to get a handle on, or they're gonna pay through their own village taxes. It's going to be paid. And so we have to do our due diligence as a county board, making sure that we are acting in a fiduciary manner to all of the citizens of the county of Kenosha. And what I'm hearing is that this is one area where we really need to start having conversations. And maybe we can't actually sit down and say, this is going to change, but we can flash that this is going to change because we're getting the data to show you. And yes, they're going to be unhappy. And you know what? I'm unhappy when I'm looking at budgets that we don't understand, or when we've got overtime, or when there are things that all of the citizens of the county are having to pay for, when it really is the responsibility of people within certain municipalities. So I really think this is something that really needs to be looked at long and hard, and people need to understand that we are going to make sure that our citizens are taken care of, but we're also going to make sure that they're taken care of by not having other people pay for other people.
So I don't have one of the contracts in front of me, but, there is a building, that we can charge for services outside of a certain amount of overtime hours.
Yeah.
They do their utilization.
But the conversations are being had, so just a little history, like roughly a year ago, we put Gilly in that position. So roughly a year ago, we have a lieutenant assigned as the liaison to all the villages, who goes in and kind of does all the dirty work, with making those contacts and having those discussions, at least the preliminary ones, to kind of plant seeds. And the sheriff and him and the captain of operations, whether it's Captain Klinkhammer and the future Captain Moranis, are the ones that sit down in those meetings and have those discussions with those administrators and their legal team. I have some ideas. I just don't want to throw them all out there at the wall right now because they're just popping in my head as we're talking. And it's not fair to just throw them at the wall. But I mean, I think we can bring this to future meetings because it is being looked at, like Sheriff, you have said, right? Ms. Belsky's been hot and heavy on that, and we want to make sure, like Captain Klinkhammer said, that we're giving clean and good data that is going to help us in the future instead of just, taking a small caption, at 3 months. So I think those conversations we'll be having, they have been had. They just, again, I have ideas, but it's not the right time and place for them.
Supervisor Nordigan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I like the town of Randall's getting, paying for these contracted villages. They do have contracts above and beyond what they also pay the county. So you have the individuals that are paying their county taxes, then they're paying their village taxes for this service. Now, could it be better? Probably can be. But I think until you get that data, I mean, it is just nothing you can do. I'm sure all villages can tell you how many ones that have their police services intact, not county ones. They tell you every single call that they went on. I'm gonna say probably not, so give them a chance. But let's give them a chance, get in there. There's no way the villages are gonna pay for
every call, I think, but I think you could come up to something that's gonna be more realistic and closer to the actual cost. But look, when Randall has 3 accidents and Wheatland has 2 accidents and they're just flooding out there, they're not paying any more for it, but you know, they have to do the job, you know, that's just what it is, and I think you kind of have to look at it that way, right? Because it's not a policing service like you have here, you know, there's how many police officers you have in the city of Kenosha. You know, and they're close by. That's not the case here with the county because how many you have in each of the villages, and now you have something serious. You have Country Thunder, you have the county fair out there, you know, you have different things going on. Large groups of people show up and things happen once in a while, right? So it just has to be part of the whole encompassing thing. That's the beauty of the county, right? But the contracts, the villages are paying separately, and they're also, the residents are also paying the county, so it's not free, they're not getting anything free, just know that.
Right, growth comes at a cost, right? And you guys have all been on the county board long enough to understand that, like, businesses come in or new subdivisions go up, they get taxed deferred. You know, so that money is not coming into their budgets for however X amount of years. I'm not real estate or a tax expert, you know, but it's minimum 5 years. So they're not, the only way to increase their revenue sources to increase their village levies, or, you know, and so obviously the growth comes at an expense in the early part of growth, right?
I mean, we have been successful in getting the villages that, yeah, so it's not like that, it's been stagnant for 20 years. Summers is up there, 4 staff on 3 shifts. Salem is added 1 on 2nd shift recently. They are considering covering their summertime 3rd shift hours with a contract equity. So they are aware, and we are trying to push them.
These conversations.
There are some loud people in some of the villages that, you know, want to give and take.
So to say these conversations are ongoing, and they're ongoing, they're contentious. And they have the same opinion for their villages that we have for our county. And these conversations happen all the time, like Chief says, political. We have to stay professional and keep smiling and shaking hands and working together. But
law enforcement and overtime is not political. When something happens, you need to be there,
we're there.
and everybody needs to pay their fair share from a financial standpoint. So politics isn't coming into this. Reality and money and need of the people is there. So Supervisor Gearston, you had your hand up next.
I did. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move approval of the sheriff budget.
It's been moved by Supervisor Gearston, seconded by Supervisor Kirby. Vice Chair Gashke, you had a question or concern?
Just a general question as far as staffing goes. Where are we at as far as vacancies with, you know, deputies, corrections, things like that?
Been dealing with that all day, every day, gentlemen.
Deputies, we are relatively, I would say, like, so we have an opening, but it's an overhire. So we're full. Correctional officers are, you know, I have the same message, right? I'm not gonna bore you with it, but very transient, tough environment. And when we talk about overtime, right, the safety and security of not only the inmates, but our staff that comes into play with, you know, when we have the backfill, when we can go with what, you know, I hate to say skeleton crew, but right, if we can make do with staff, sometimes we're forced because of all the call-ins. It's, again, I've had all these conversations 100 times, right? I'm happy to throw ideas at the wall and see what sticks, but, I don't know, it is, so I don't know, right now, -2, so I mean, we're not bad, but again, I caution that tale with the amount of people that are in training.
Right.
That's a forever.
So -2 would be 10. And here's just would be a 7-4.
But we have our recruitment, deputy just got promoted, so coming in. And he's just as sharp as the last, right? If we don't put our foot off the pedal on that, then I can say just from sitting in interviews that we got a ton of good feedback from candidates. We feel really, I mean, when I was sitting here 3 years ago talking about this, we were drawing straws, trying to figure out how do we get people to apply? Well, we had our largest recruitment after an eligibility list ever. That we're running through now. We're almost we're in the middle of that list. Right, so, and then detentions is an evergreen process, so they're nonstop. So I think we have no other vacancies in, like our civilian staff we're good. We have no worries about the kitchen at this time, right, because that's an Aramark contract, so that's taking some anxiety off the plates of supervisors. So I think we're in a good place. I think this wellness program is going to help. It's not the be all solve all, but it's another tool in their bag, you know, to try to give them a better environment to work in.
So as far as the overtime goes, would the majority of the overtime be related to corrections or not necessarily?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Hands down.
It's about 60%. So I did an analysis on 24, and I think that's, if I'm recalling correctly, it was about 60% was driven by correction.
Okay.
What are the other numbers that make up the 100? How do you open the door?
The other ones would be. Our
Deputy sheriff.
So deputies is the other 40 and 60 corrections?
So you have services in there too, right? That recruitment, the administrative side of things, deputy friendly, any kind of community events that we may do, you know, we put a pretty tight, you know, lock on that. Funerals, you name it, right? All those community, like the administrative services, it's kind of that bubble that is like the catch-all of the all services division because everything kind of falls into that division. So, there could be a handful of things. I would say probably 10% comes from administrative services.
I thought
30%
corrections would be more than 60.
Yeah, I mean.
I just thought that,
50%
so.
4 million.
You still have the floor.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I'm gonna ask, what portion, and let's stick with finance, what portion of these contracts, when we have to send other deputies to cover, and where we're admitting that we need more coverage, how much of that impacts the overtime? Or doesn't it? Am I, you know?
Right, if you get, I think of the Summers House shooting, right? I mean.
No, I'm not thinking of a shooting anywhere in the county. I'm just thinking of coverage
Yeah.
in a village. I mean, if we had a shooting anywhere, I would expect us to have to go there and pay
A low
overtime.
amount, if you're talking about just overall coverage.
Typically would be an on-duty deputy responding to that call for service.
Yeah.
If that came into a larger investigation, there could be overtime, but not necessarily.
Go ahead.
Covering the village on overtime.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if there's overtime that occurs in a village, it's because of a late call at the end of the shift, a major call where we need multiple people there. We do charge the villages for their contract deputies overtime, if they're working on a call in that village. That's been in our contracts for years. We never tracked it. So we have been over the past 3 years. So we are able now to, look at our overtime data based on codes on what the overtime is for. And the majority of our deputy overtime is backfilling vacancies for if a deputy's missing for training or vacation or casuals. And then, for completing their cases that have to be done before they go home, that sort of thing.
The Crafton Point, we're around the clock on creating different codes within Telestaff, which is our workforce, hourly tracker, whatever you want to call it, right? Payroll management system. If there's a code that we can make for it, he's been making them as we go so we can get that data, right? Because again, we haven't been a data-driven agency, you know, because we didn't have a data analyst. We didn't have the right tools. So I think in this year alone, you've seen the reports. We try to be as transparent as we can with everything that you guys add. It may not be timely as There's some you guys want, but we are trying, right? And we're gonna, I'm not looking at you. I'm just saying. You're asking for a friend, you phone a friend. I'm just saying, we're not, our intention is never to ignore or try to sweep something away, right?
Well, yeah, we're not, nobody's saying that.
I'm just trying to get you guys the best data that makes sense, because otherwise we're just gonna sit in here for hours and talk about.
Yeah, this whole village contract thing has never been on my radar, and now it is.
Yeah,
So that's an interesting thing.
yeah, I read your mind already.
Yeah. Yeah, you did. We'll have another conversation about that. Yeah, see, now he switched me from overtime. See how he played me like that? He switched me from overtime to the village contract.
How long we plan this?
All right, I'm curious about those contracts and what goes into them. I'm convinced we're not spending overtime there, and I want us to help everybody, and that's what public safety is all about. So, and you guys do a good job with that. So, unfortunately, there's bills to be paid. That's what we're sitting at this committee doing.
We
So,
came forward with the, billing for the extra overtime for the village cars. That was one of those conversations. It was an unpleasant conversation. And it's in the contract. We just weren't able to track it before. So we do that now. Those bills go on.
yeah, I'd like to have you come to finance and go over those numbers on overtime when you get more data and you have that broken out. That'll be fun. Okay, any other questions or comments? We have a motion on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. It's
Supervisor Gearsman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I heard the sheriff say that Captain Klinkhammer is retiring, and I've had the privilege of working with Captain Klinkhammer a little bit. And I just want to thank you for your passion and dedication and the wonderful work you did. And God bless you, and I hope you will have a wonderful retirement. I heard the sheriff is taking it in touch, and you might still be working a little bit. So I.
You can always come back and do some corrections, Chip.
I yield.
Like a dream come true.
I yield.
It's been moved by Supervisor Gearston, seconded by Supervisor Nudo to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.